Let's take a look at some of the key storylines heading into week 3 as we go into our 4-minute offense. Hurricane Florence is having a tremendous impact on the week 3 FCS schedule along the mid-Atlantic seaboard. There has already been a cancellation with Tennessee State and Hampton, a couple of rescheduled games like Campbell and Coastal Carolina being moved to Wednesday, Robert Morris, James Madison being moved from Saturday to Thursday, along with Guilford and Davidson, with Charleston Southern and the Citadel, along with Elon and William & Mary and Norfolk State Liberty being moved to a later date, with some depending on whether or not the teams that are involved are in the FCS playoffs. So we'll keep monitoring this situation as the week rolls on. Ivy League football kicks off this week as the Ancient Eight spring into action. There's going to be a lot of excitement surrounding the league this year, as it seems to be as wide open as it has ever been. Princeton, Yale, Harvard, Columbia, Penn, and Dartmouth all have a chance to win the crown, while both Cornell and Brown look to get back into the conversation with improved play this upcoming season. With Princeton's quarterback John Lovett back from injury, the Ivy League has 2 of the top quarterbacks in the FCS, along with Yale's Kurt Rawlings. We'll see which one can also put their name in the conversation for the Walter Payton Award, in addition to the Bushnell Cup. Don't look now, but Davidson and Chattanooga are playing some really impressive football to start the season. Both teams were dreadful last year, with both already looking vastly improved on offense. Continuity and consistency is key in college football, so we'll see if they can keep this momentum rolling as the schedule gets tougher and as they jump into the meat of conference play. Both coaches, first-year head coach Scott Abel at Davidson and second-year head coach Tom Arth at Chattanooga, definitely deserve a ton of credit. And here's a sleeper team to keep an eye on this season, the Richmond Spiders. I was at the Fordham game last week where they had a lot of success against the Rams, and I came away most impressed with the secondary and the passing game of Richmond. On the back end, they're long, they're athletic, they're fierce against the run, and while on offense, quarterback Kevin Johnson has good field vision and the athleticism to buy time in the pocket while being able to also get the ball deep downfield to a quartet of excellent perimeter options led by wide receiver Deshaun Brissett. If the Spiders can find consistency along their offensive line as the season moves on, watch out. Not as many as before, but there are still some games on the week 3 schedule that have landed firmly on our upset alert list. This will be one of the more entertaining games of the weekend as the Eastern Washington Eagles travel to Pullman to take on Washington State. Both teams mirror one another in how they attack defenses. They love to push the pace and the tempo and also spread the field. The Eagles quarterback Gage Gubrud has started off the season red hot, tossing 9 touchdowns with no interceptions while completing 65% of his passes. In order to beat a team like Washington State, you have to be able to affect the pocket and match up on the perimeter on both sides of the ball, and I believe the Eagles can do that. Plus, this year's team has the outstanding tailback in Sam McPherson, who balances out their offense. While it's a tall task, I do believe the Eagles are up for it and will pull off the stunner against the Cougars. The Wofford Terriers take their triple option on the road this week to Laramie, Wyoming to face the Cowboys. Now, Wyoming entered the season with a lot of fanfare based around their defense and how great it was going to be this upcoming season. It's been a bit up and down on that side of the ball, and on offense, they're taking their lumps with redshirt freshman quarterback Tyler Vanderwall. The Terriers' defense has been as good as advertised, with defensive lineman Miles Brown leading the way. Their option of offense is obviously strong running the football, but if they want to upset Wyoming, their passing game has to be as effective and efficient as it was against VMI. The Terriers completed 15 of 17 pass attempts for 2 touchdowns. Now, it's a different animal going up against Craig Bowles' defense, but the point still remains. They'll have at least 2 to 3 big play opportunities in the passing game. They'll have to make those opportunities in order to win. This one will be very close in my opinion, but I still like Wyoming to walk away with the W. Here's another intriguing matchup in week 3 that definitely has the potential for an upset. Prairie View A&M travels to Vegas to take on UNLV. Panther running back Dewanya Tucker is playing out of his mind right now. The 5'7", 165-pound tailback has posted back-to-back 200-yard games so far this season and nearly ran for 100 yards against the Rice Owls in week 0. He's averaging an eye-popping 10.3 yards a carry. New head coach Eric Dooley's offense is high-octane and does a ton of damage on both ends of offense. Defensively, against UNLV, it's about not allowing talented quarterback Armani Rogers to beat them on the ground. He's a terrific dual threat guy, but they'll have to take away one of those options in order to win. Playing mistake-free football will also be key against the Rebels. Can the Panthers avoid self-inflicted wounds that have plagued them in their 2 losses? We'll see. But I like UNLV in this ballgame. I'm expecting a lot of points to be scored in this one.
I think that the main reason to choose HBCU is for the family atmosphere. The guys are going to get the core values that their parents taught them, that their family members tried to raise them. You'll have a close-knit atmosphere. You'll actually have guys that care about you as a person. So I think that's the main reason for choosing the HBCU.
The Jackson State Tigers take on the Florida A&M Rattlers this weekend in Tallahassee. Now, the Tigers game last week against Tennessee State was canceled due to inclement weather, so this will be their first game in 2 weeks. The Rattlers hope that the team that played against Fort Valley and not the one that played against Troy shows up in this one. Jackson State's offense is still a work in progress, while the Rattlers defense does a great job in getting to the quarterback. Early in the season, defenses are usually ahead of the offense, and that's what we have in this game. Look for FAMU to get the W at home. This is going to be a really good game in the SoCon between Mercer and Sanford. Styles make fights, and we have a good contrast in styles in this one. The Bears run the ball extremely well and are led by tailback T. Mitchell. Their level of ball control is actually great defense because we know how the Sanford Bulldogs can put up points on the board. Sanford is coming off of a close loss to Florida State in a game where they led for a good part of that contest. One takeaway from that matchup was the 4 interceptions thrown by the talented quarterback Devlin Hodges. You look at those turnovers under the scope of lost possessions against a team that can run the ball like Mercer, and it could be more detrimental than it could be against a team like Florida State. That's going to be the biggest key in this game. Honestly, can the Bears defense force turnovers, and can their offense maximize their possessions? Mercer has been close but haven't been able to seal the deal against the Bulldogs. Look for that streak to continue. I like Sanford. As we mentioned in the open, the Ivy League kicks off their season this week, and we have a great matchup between Princeton and the surprising Butler Bulldogs. Princeton looks loaded on offense with a quartet of stars in quarterback John Lovett, wide receiver Stephen Carlson and Jesper Horsted, and running back Charlie Volker. They figure to be a factor in the Ivy League this season. Defensively, edge rusher Kurt Haluba is back and ready to wreak havoc on opposing offenses. The Bulldogs are 2-0 on the season and have already upset a top 25 team in Youngstown State. If they're going to knock off Princeton, quarterback Will Marty will have to continue his stellar play throwing the football. The offensive line will have to keep him well protected in order for that to happen. I think Butler will be game, but the fresh legs of Princeton will prove to be too much. I like the Tigers. The Toreros travel all the way to Cambridge to take on the Harvard Crimson. San Diego lost a tough one last week to UC Davidson, coming to this ball game looking to be much better along the lines of scrimmage. That's where Harvard is their strongest this year. Head coach Tim Murphy's MO has always been about stout point of attack play, and I'm interested to see how consistent they can be on offense. They had their struggles in the passing game last year, which really stymied their offense as a whole. The Crimson are usually well balanced, so was last year an aberration or a trend? I think it was just a cascade of problems in a down year for Harvard. Look for a much better output this season. I like Harvard to win this one in their opener. Another Ivy League team with a lot of optimism coming into the season would be the Yale Bulldogs, who kick off their season against the Holy Cross Crusaders. This will be a battle along the line of scrimmage. The Bulldogs return a ton of talent up front and were one of the best offenses in the Ivy last season. The Crusaders have 2 studs within their front 7 in defensive end Teddy Capsis and linebacker Ryan Brady. And I'm a big fan of quarterback Kurt Rawlins and running back Zane Dudek. Rawlins should take an even bigger step forward as a junior. Holy Cross's bugaboo this year has been inept offense. Again, much of that is expected when you're learning a new scheme and a new head coach. Yale is just too strong right now in my opinion and should make it 15 out of 16 wins against the Crusaders. Wagner travels to Bozeman, Montana to face off against Montana State. Both teams dealing with quarterback issues, and you immediately want to focus elsewhere in this NEC Big Sky matchup. The running game for the Seahawks has been solid as they feature 2 dynamic talents and Ryan Foles and Denzel Knight, who's more of the slot receiver within this offense. They have to find ways to keep both guys well fed in this matchup. The Bobcats were without quarterback Troy Anderson last week because of a hand injury, relegating him to playing just running back and defense, which really hampered their offensive attack. Defensively, they struggled on both ends against South Dakota State, but coming to this one really having only to hone in on the ground game of Wagner. It should be a close one, but I like the Seahawks to win this game. Look for Wagner to make enough plays in the passing game to keep Montana State honest and come away victorious. What an interesting game here in week 3 between Montana and Western Illinois. You don't want to call this one a must-win game for the Leathernecks this early in the season, but they're staring 0-3 in the face, and we know how tough it is to not only fight your way back into the mix, but also do so enough to get into the playoffs. So this game against the undefeated Grizz is going to be a huge one for Western. What both teams have in common is a lack of a running game. The Grizz leading rushers, their quarterback Dalton Snead. The same for the Leathernecks. Quarterback Steve McShane leads their team in rushing. Obviously, that can't be the case moving forward, but where they differ is on the defensive side of the ball. I'm a big fan of the Montana Grizzly defense led by linebacker Josh Buss, and to me, that'll be the key in this game and the reason why Montana moves on to an impressive 3-0 start to the season. South Dakota and Weber State meet up in Ogden, Utah this weekend. Quarterback Austin Simmons has looked phenomenal so far this year and has filled in nicely at the position. Weber took care of business last week against the option attack of Cal Poly, and we'll be looking for an encore performance from a defense that was able to live behind the line of scrimmage. So it'll be important for the Coyotes to avoid the slow start like they did defensively against Northern Colorado. I think we'll see a game that'll go down to the last few minutes with South Dakota winning. Right now, I have more questions than answers about Weber State's offense to see them knocking off the Red Hot Coyotes. Another game where the style of the two teams make this one a really good matchup. The North Dakota Fighting Hawks head to the Lone Star State to take on the Sam Houston State Bearcats. I know North Dakota can match up along both sides of the line of scrimmage and can wear you down with their running game. I also like how they match up in the secondary led by cornerback Deion Harris. The question is, can they keep pace with Sam Houston State's offense, and can they be dominant enough within their own offense to shrink the ball game? I think we'll see more of the latter. Look for the Fighting Hawks to make plays in the secondary, putting the ball back in the hands of a strong running game and pull off the upset against the Bearcats. So look for both John Santiago and Brady Oliveira to have huge days on the ground. The surprising new to the FCS North Alabama Lions are off to a 2-0 start, and they get their biggest test yet against the defending national champion North Dakota State Bison. The difference between Division II and Division I is the same difference between the FCS and the FBS. It's the line of scrimmage. Therein lies the biggest key in this ball game. Does North Alabama have the depth of talent along the line of scrimmage to compete with the best in the FCS in that area? That's a tall task to ask, which is why they'll have to be excellent elsewhere, like on special teams and also generating chunk plays and creating turnovers. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's going to be very hard. I like the Lions to compete well. They'll be game, but the Bison will flex his muscle and tame North Alabama. Big time matchup in the CAA between Towson and Villanova. The two teams are stylistically similar, and they also share similar strengths. We've talked ad nauseum throughout the video about point of attack play and being great along both sides of the line of scrimmage. Well, these two teams are excellent in that capacity and do a great job in stopping the run. With that being the backdrop, you look out to the perimeter and see where the opportunities are and who has the advantage. To be honest, both quarterbacks have been balling early in the season, with Towson's Tom Flacco being quite the revelation thanks to his dual threat capability. The Tigers do a great job of spreading the ball around. The Wildcats feature their H-back Ryan Bell, who has been clutch in crucial situations on third downs and also inside the red zone throughout the season. He's their leading receiver. I think the Wildcats will win this one. They seem to be a bit more stout up front and can do a great job of making Flacco one-dimensional en route to a victory. Before we get to our stats FCS Kickoff Game of the Week preview, here is where I'll be this weekend. Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time at Green Stadium in our nation's capital. I'll be the color analyst for the Howard-Savannah State game. It'll be a great opportunity to check out Howard Bison quarterback Kalen Newton as Savannah State's edge rusher Stephen Banks, who is a legitimate NFL prospect, will try to slow down the go-go offense of Howard. It's Savannah State's swan song in the MEAC, and head coach Eric Rayburn is trying to leave the conference on a high note. Bison head coach Mike London has restored the rumble in the program as he tries to get his team to the playoffs or to the Celebration Bowl this upcoming December 15th on ABC. This game kicks off at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app.
Well, the FCS creates so many opportunities for young men. And it's, I think, and you look in our league, it's really the best. It's the best combination of winning football, but also outstanding student athletes. That's really the true model here. And a lot of the FCS programs feel the same way. And, you know, we're blessed to be where we're at here at Lehigh, and everybody else in this league feels the same way. But the FCS, you'll see a lot of people that aren't coming necessarily to the NFL, but what they are is they're becoming leaders of industry, whatever they do when they graduate. And that's really the most important piece of going to college and playing college football, is to getting that degree. and our guys really excel in that response.
And now it's time for our Stats FCS Kickoff Game of the Week preview between two top 20 squads out of the Southland Conference in the Nichols Colonels and the McNeese State Cowboys. Now let's take a look at some coaching points for both teams in this ball game, starting with Nichols State. And I think it all starts with Forcade's ball security. The quarterback, Chase Forcade, has to be able to protect the football. He's going up against a McNeese State Cowboys secondary that has 4 interceptions on the season already, 2 in each of their 2 games. And next, it's about playing stellar red zone defense. 5 teams have made trips inside the red zone against Nichols, and 5 times they come away with touchdowns. They have to play stellar red zone defense if they want to beat McNeese State, and they can't hesitate to throw the ball deep down the field, attack the secondary vertically. I think there are some opportunities deep down the field for them to make some plays in the passing game. I know McNeese State has this very good secondary, and I just talked about how they're able to take the ball away, but there are some opportunities to generate chunk plays against this football team. So Chase Forcade, again, ball security, can't be afraid to take those shots deep down the field. Moving on to McNeese State in this ball game, and it's important that the offensive line stays strong up front. This is a unit that has only given up 4 sacks on the season. That's outstanding. They're going up against one of the best defensive lines in the FCS, led by Sully Leach of Nichols, and they're going to have to make sure they keep quarterback James Tabari clean in the pocket. And they also have to keep their foot on the gas. I feel as though both games that they've won so far this season, they've allowed teams to come back into the ball game and make it a game. I know they blew out Houston Baptist, but that game should have not even been in question as far as how many points Houston Baptist was able to score late. So you want to find ways to keep your foot on the gas, especially against a team like Nichols. And finally, it's about discipline. The penalties have to clean up. This is a team that averages 10 penalties a game. If you beat yourself against a team like Nichols and Coach Tim Rebo and his squad, they're going to find ways to knock you off the top. So it's about team discipline, playing smart football, and not beating yourself. Let's take a look at some X factors in this ball game. Looking at Nichols' X factor, I think defensive lineman Kenny Dotson is going to have a huge day. He's one of the best pass rushers on his football team. He can cause problems for the McNeese State passing game. They can have a lot of success not only defensively but as a whole. So I look at Dotson being the guy that has to be the X factor in this game for Nichols. And for McNeese State, looking at the backfield, they have tremendous depth in the backfield, led by Justin Pratt, Ryan Ross, and also David Ham. These 3 guys can help lead this football team to victory. They are really the ones that complete this offense. James Tabari is a tremendous quarterback, but if they can't get that ground game going and make themselves one-dimensional against a team like Nichols that can really get after the quarterback, it could be a problem. So again, the X factor for McNeese State will have to be their backfield depth, and that ties into right into point number 2 I made about their offensive line being consistent, or point number 1, their offensive line having to be strong in this game against Nichols. I like the Cowboys in this ball game. I just think from a complete team perspective, offensive line, secondary, the way they can turn the ball over, the way they can run the football with that depth, and James Tabari playing lights out at the quarterback position, I can trust McNeese to go in there and take care of business against Nichols. I think this game will be very close. It'll be tightly contested, but I like the Cowboys to come away victorious in a huge game in the FCS. So that's it for this week's episode of the FCS Kickoff. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts, and be sure to check out and subscribe on iTunes to the Football Game Plan's FCS Opening Drive podcast, where David Hashagen and myself will keep you up to date to what's going on around the FCS.